Hello and welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you joining us today. And just a few little notes as we wait for everyone to come on in. If you have any questions throughout this, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll be answering questions throughout. And then we'll also have time for a more extensive Q&A at the end of this as well. If you're dropped out of the Zoom, you can join back in at any time with the link from your email. So feel free to just join back in. And if you notice that you're having issues with your Zoom not connecting well, we recommend disconnecting all of your other devices from the internet, closing all the tabs that you have open. We found that that really helps to keep all the bandwidth on Zoom so that you have the best connection possible. And if you have any questions that aren't answered today, please feel free to give any of us a call at 802-387-5000. We'll be here to answer your questions if you have them afterwards. I'm just going to do that one more time for all the folks who are streaming in. Again, welcome. We're excited to have you here. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. And we'll be answering them throughout and then also addressing a larger Q&A at the end of this. If you're dropped out of the Zoom call, you can rejoin at any time with the link in your email, and it's helpful to close all tabs and disconnect all your other devices from the internet because it will allow Zoom to run more seamlessly in this space. And if you have any other questions, you can give us a call at 802-387-5000. But from all of us here at Putney Pre-College and Harvard T.H, C-CHANGE, we're thrilled to have you joining us here today and welcome you. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Shumlin.
Thank you, Maya. I'm delighted to be here with my colleagues. You'll learn more about Maya as we go forward, but she's going to be the director of this great program on campus. You're also going to be hearing from my colleague at C-CHANGE, Harvard T.H, Sky Flanagan, and the director of Harvard T.H, my colleague, Dr. Ari Bernstein, who has snuck out of his patients. He has more balls in the air than anyone I know. And we really appreciate you being here, Ari, and I know you'll get a proper introduction in a minute. I just briefly want to talk a little bit about why I'm so enthusiastic about this program and how it came to be. And I should just start out by saying that Putney was founded by my parents 70 years ago, and I was working away here in the barn with people like Maya. There are about 35, 40 of us packed into this old cow barn sending educational summer programs all over the world. My parents had instilled in me what I think Putney instills in middle and high school students, which is a sense that your obligation is bigger than just to yourself, your family, your future. You've got to do something about the importance of the planet. And it was the bottom of the recession. The whole world was in a recession. We had an open governor's race in Vermont, and I said, I'm going to run for governor. I'm probably telling things that Ari and Maya and Sky have never heard, but I said, I'm going to run for governor and just raise some issues. I have no chance of winning because, by the way, Putney, Vermont is on the southeast corner of Vermont. All the people are up in Burlington. We haven't had governors from here in 50 years because we have no people. But I said, at least I'll raise some issues in the primary and maybe they'll get carried into the general. So anyway, I did. And there's a picture of me running around Vermont talking to folks. But one of the things I said was, listen, to create jobs in Vermont and also ensure that we actually have a livable planet, I'm going to give you a kind of crazy idea. If you elect me governor, I'm going to make energy a huge part of our economic comeback. And we're going to shut down the aging nuclear power plant that generated much of the power for Vermont. We're going to build out solar and wind and do energy efficiency like no state has ever seen before. And when we do that, we'll create jobs. We'll put money in Vermonters' pockets because electric rates will go down. Therefore, you'll save more money. And most importantly, we'll help develop this green future. So I won't give you, we don't have time here for all the details. Bottom line is I won. I want to be clear. I won by that first election by several thousand votes, but I did win. And the first bill I signed was a comprehensive energy bill that implemented the policies that I'd outlined that you can see me signing here. So anyway, I served 3 terms. I didn't run for a 4th. But in the course of that time, and if you just flick to the next slide, I should mention that you have to remember in politics, when you win elections, most of the people, or many of the people, don't agree with you. They didn't vote for you. You win by smaller margins, ask Joe Biden or anyone else who just won elections. And they don't believe in what you're doing. We got hit by a climate change induced storm shortly after I was elected, Hurricane Irene. It devastated our state. We got 21 inches of rain pounded Vermont in a few hours, not unlike what happened subsequently in Hurricane Sandy a few months later that Governor Christie and Cuomo were dealing with in New York and so on and so forth. Anyway, it devastated us, wiped out our old covered bridges, hundreds of bridges and roads we couldn't get from east to west in Vermont. We lost lives. Good Vermonters who were living next to little brooks got washed away in major rivers. Wildlife had nowhere to go. It was an unmitigated disaster. I only raise that because I think the situation we're in right now with climate-induced storms is going to happen in much the same way it did in Vermont, where people who were skeptical of my policies said, hey, maybe this is true. Maybe there's something going on here that's larger than just politics and policy. It's affecting my life. I'm seeing my neighbors getting wiped out. It's having an economic impact. So anyway, long and short of it is, we did what we said we would do, which many politicians don't. And when we were all done, Vermont was, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists, the #1 solar state in America. We had created thousands of jobs. In fact, today, Vermont, being the #1 solar state in those years, if you have 17 Vermonters in a room, one of them is in the renewable energy business. Our electric rates went down when our neighbors around us went up. And most importantly, we moved Vermont towards our goal of 90% renewable by 2050. So without getting into too much detail, next stage was and I just pointed out this slide because obviously, whether it's California wildfires, Australia burning up, whatever it is the latest week, we all know the challenge that we're facing is the biggest challenge of our time. So when I didn't run for a fourth term, I came back to Putney, but I also had the pleasure of doing some teaching at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And then I had the good fortune of ending up as a fellow at the School of Public Health, only to find my friend and colleague Gina McCarthy there. And she was heading up C-CHANGE, which Dr. Bernstein is now heading up. What is that? Well, Sky and Dr. Bernstein can tell you more, but bottom line is Harvard had the good judgment to, when the Obama administration ended, bring Gina McCarthy in to head up their climate change work both internally and externally. And so we were having a glass of wine one night and talking about Harvard and all their resources and the things that were happening and how important it is to move this issue forward for activists. And we were talking in particular about the frustration of middle and high school students who at that point were driving the train on climate. This is a year and a half ago. They were walking out of school on Friday. Greta was coming across to give her speech to the UN to a United States president who had pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord. And I said, we said kind of collectively, isn't it kind of nuts that Harvard's using all their amazing resources to dedicate towards undergraduates and graduate students, and all the action is coming from middle and high school students who are basically saying, how can we take this passion to save the planet and turn it into action? And Gina got the idea, let's start these summits. So that is really, I credit her for being the brainchild behind this effort. We planned to do it last summer. We had to cancel it because of COVID. Gina McCarthy, as you all know, has since become Biden's domestic policy advisor on climate, doing an extraordinary job. We hope we'll catch her coming home one week, and just bring her in to say a few words about the great work that she'll be doing. But anyway, that's how this all started. I'm incredibly honored to be working together with the team at C-CHANGE to help make these summits happen, and really glad to be a part of it. So that's just a little bit of history of how we got here, and I'll turn it over to people much wiser than me to give you the rest of the story. And I look forward to joining you in the questions at the end. Thanks.
Thanks.
And I'm going to turn it over to Sky Flanagan.
Turn it over to me.
When I come back to life, I want to come back to life as Sky Flanagan.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for introducing it. I think you did a great job setting it up. My name is Sky Flanagan. I'm the program manager at Harvard Center for Climate Health and the Global Environment. We're at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And our mission is to increase the public awareness of the health impacts of climate change and use science to make sure that it's personal, actionable, and urgent. So we're at this really interesting intersection of climate change, public health, and then really getting the message out there to the larger audience. So we do a lot of communications work and a lot of translating science. I can go to the next slide. And one thing that we recognized in this journey is that the youth, as Pete mentioned, are really the ones that are leading the charge on this initiative. And, I was personally so inspired by all the youth climate strikes that happened, and seeing activists like Greta Thunberg and others that were able to step up and say, we are not going to take this anymore. We demand climate action because it is our future that's at stake. And right now we have to take action. And then we saw the world transform with a global pandemic, and our work shifted a bit at the center to really drawing the connections between how climate actions are also pandemic solutions. Dr. Ari Bernstein, who's on the call, we have him for a couple more minutes, can definitely talk about this in more depth, but it's a really interesting time to be talking about how we can take better care of the planet and have better interactions with the planet so that we don't have this kind of situation happen again. And as Pete mentioned, we had to postpone our summit from last summer, but we did collaborate with Putney to put out a 5-part educational resource series for educators. It was used all over the US as well as internationally. It's still available on our website free of charge to really help fill the gap as we shifted to this online learning and making sure people had resources available to them in the classroom, in the virtual classroom. But we are so excited that we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we look forward to bringing students back together this summer. And I'm going to pass it over to Maya from Putney to talk more about the 2-week summer courses that we have set up. So thanks.
So for just a bird's eye overview of what the programs will look like this summer, that was great history of how we got to where we are today. So thank you, Governor Shumlin and Sky. I really appreciate it. But this summer we have 2 different youth summits, one called the Climate Change Summit, which has a little bit more focus towards climate change, and the other has slightly more focus on public health. Although I do want to mention that both summits will be talking about both of these issues as well as other issues and how they all are intersectional and weave together. Both of the summits are available for students completing 9th through 12th grade, and the dates of them are down here, but I'll just read them out loud as well. The Climate Change Summit is July 18th through 24th, and the Public Health Summit is July 25th through 31st. And for me, the most exciting piece of the summits is this incredible lineup of guest speakers who we have who are going to be working with the students. And I feel so honored today to have one of our guest speakers who is also the interim director of Harvard T.H. and C-CHANGE and a professor on pediatrics at the Harvard Medical School, and also a pediatrician himself at Boston Children's, and in all of that, squeezing us in this time. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Ari Bernstein to just share a little bit about his work and some of the guest speakers that are going to be joining us.
Thanks, Maya, and thank you, Sky, and thank you very much, Governor Shumlin. I hadn't heard that whole story, Pete, and it is really a terrific story. And you heard I have a few balls in the air, but the reality is, and Sky can vouch for this, there's really nothing I'm more excited about in the near term in my life than this summer event. I mean, I'm a pediatrician. My job is to keep well. When I started working on climate and health decades ago, people would say, why do you care? And the answer is really simple. It's because climate change really matters to people who are younger than me. And so that, we could have the opportunity to think together about why climate change and why public health is so critical for you and what future you want to see is really an amazing opportunity for me. And so I'm thrilled that Governor Shumlin and Gina McCarthy came together to really get this going. And, the response and interest you should all take note of has been overwhelming. There are a lot of people who have amazing backgrounds who want want to be with you all. That includes the dean of our school, Michelle Williams. Michelle made climate change one of the top priorities for our school when she took over as dean. And she's an epidemiologist by training. So, her background is not in climate change, but she recognized how critical it is because it's a transformative issue. Gaurav Basu is an internal medicine doctor. He takes care of adults, but his focus is entirely on climate change and equity, and really digging into how climate change is such a critical issue for the equity issues that not only matter to who's vulnerable from climate risks, but importantly, how climate actions can really get at some of the disparities that we've seen in terms of health. You see it in COVID and the health disparities and who's getting sicker, who's getting infected, but more broadly in our society, it turns out that many of the things we need to do to address climate change really do address equity, and that's what Gaurav has dedicated his career to. Francesca Dominici is probably one of the world's most distinguished public health scientists. She literally has written the book on data science and public health, and she is the head of the Harvard Data Science Initiative. She's published the original papers looking at how heat can affect health in huge populations. And she too, while not originally being concerned with climate change, has become a major proponent of climate action. She's weighed in on major political decisions by the federal government and is just an extraordinarily distinguished scientist and a really socially responsible member of academia. Marcia Castro is another high-powered academician. Her focus, though, is on the infectious disease standpoint of climate change. She does a tremendous amount of work in Brazil, trying to understand not just how climate affects things like Zika virus, but how chopping down forests and changing ecosystems, and of course chopping down forests is a big part of climate change, can fuel the spread of infectious diseases. Marcia is a nationally distinguished scholar in this regard. She's called on by the National Academy of Sciences on a regular basis, as well as many other prominent forums. And then Howie Frumkin, whom I've known for many years. Howie was the head of the National Center for Environmental Health at the Centers for Disease Control. He was dean of the University of Washington School of Public Health for many years. And he's arguably probably one of the most distinguished people in the field of environmental health in the world. He recently co-authored the seminal book, sort of the original book on planetary health. And I couldn't be more excited to have him speak. Keep going, the list goes on. Howard Koh. Howard was the Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services in the Obama administration, and he was charged with addressing climate change within HHS in the Obama administration. He was also Commissioner for Public Health for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Renee Salas is an emergency medicine physician who has taken her passion for climate change and gone big. She is head of the Lancet Countdown on Climate Change and Health, which is an annual report that looks at how climate change is affecting health. She's also spearheaded a major new partnership between Harvard Medical School, the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, and our center, looking at how climate change matters to clinical practice. So how does it affect how doctors and nurses and pharmacists do our jobs? Nadia Nazar is much closer to your age than mine. She is a co-founder, and Sky, I'm going to get it confused, so I need your help. Which climate organization did she found?
0 Hour.
0 Hour, thank you. And is just an extraordinary example of the kind of voices that you all bring to the table and articulating how important it is, not just for people like me to listen better, but really articulating a vision of what we need to do that reflects the intergenerational equity, the intergenerational justice that is a cornerstone of this. Natalia Linos is currently the executive director of the FXB Center for Health and Human Rights here at Harvard. Natalia is this really distinguished background, has spent a tremendous amount of time working with the United Nations, and working on, in the UNDP, working on development. And in that work, she recognized how we need to really interlock the notion of economic development with climate. And not just in the resilience sense and protecting people from climate change, but how we can really do development in a global sense better when we integrate climate planning in terms of energy systems like Governor Shumlin, and we see this time and again, and a good example of this is, to the hurricanes you heard about in Haiti, during many recent hurricanes actually. Power outages have been routine, but the infrastructure that's powered by solar has actually stayed electrified. And so you see how climate actions can not only, preserve the climate, reduce air pollution, but also provide resiliency. Jeff Nesbitt is the head of an organization called Climate Nexus. Climate Nexus is arguably the world's most foremost organization focused on climate change communication. In a prior life, Jeff worked in the FDA during the era where they were going after big tobacco. And he spent a large part of his career there really figuring out how to take on an industry that was trying to confuse the public about the safety of tobacco. And he's taken those skills and applied them in the climate realm. And if you don't know, it turns out that many of the fossil fuel companies have hired, in fact, the same people who are advising the tobacco industry on how to confuse the public to actually confuse the public about climate change. So we will not have a better person to talk to us about how to think about communicating about climate change and how people understand climate change as an issue than Jeff. And then, of course, Governor Shumlin, who, as you heard, did extraordinary things in Vermont, in a state where I would argue many people would have said Vermont being the leading solar state, that sounds completely ridiculous. And yet the proof is in the pudding. One of the biggest myths and pernicious myths, harmful myths about climate action is that when you go to renewables, energy prices go up, or that if you go to renewables, people lose jobs. And the example that Governor Shumlin said in Vermont is just so critical to hear about, because you will always be faced with people who say the path of renewables, the path of climate action is, anti-job, it's bad for energy prices. And there's so many examples, and it's so important that these examples be heard. So, and these are just a sampling of the folks you guys get to hear with. I mean, I'm just talking about these folks and myself excluded, and I want to be in this classroom. So I'm so delighted that you chose to listen to us today. I'd be thrilled to get the chance to meet you all at Harvard this summer, and I'll turn it back to Skye.
I'll jump in here. Thank you so much, Dr. Bernstein. We so appreciate your time and that wonderful introduction to just a few of the speakers that we have this summer, and even more are coming in every day, because there's so many people who are excited to work with you all, to work with young people. And we really see this program as the opportunity for youth to come together with a shared passion and not only learn from and interact with the guest speakers, but also learn from and uplift each other and have this shared community with a shared sense of purpose, so that when you go back home to your home community, you have this whole slew of people on your team that you can reach out to at any time and work together with them to help solve some of these major issues that Dr. Bernstein and Governor Shumlin are alluding to. So with each of the programs, if you wanted to join the Climate Change Summit, you would choose an action focus to have as your lens through which you're exploring the themes of climate change. And so we'll be talking about all of them in all of the action focus groups, but this will be a smaller group that you're a part of that's focused a little bit more on community or industry or policy and security, press and media, or the science and technology side of climate change. And similar for the public health program, we have 5 different action focuses that you can choose from, ranging from community health, environmental health, global health, to infectious disease and policy. And of course, if you are interested in multiple of these, you can always join both summits back to back and continue and deepen your learning in the second week of the program. Every student on the program will have an opportunity that we're all really excited about, and that's to share your knowledge and your goals with the other students and with us on the program. And so we kind of view it as a TED Talk style event, where every student will get to present their climate action plan or a public health project they're interested in, and share with the cohort the ideas that they're working on, so that you can have a chance to practice sharing those ideas. Nadia, who Dr. Bernstein mentioned, has shared her ideas on the floor of the UN in 2018 and has practiced that a lot and is a great resource for that. And we would love to hear from you. But also it's a chance to sort of work on something that then connects back to your home community and take these big ideas, these big concepts, and figure out how you want to apply them back at home. Of course, a highlight for everyone on the program is getting to explore the grounds and the campuses of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the Harvard Medical School, the undergraduate school, and even more so the entire cities of Boston and Cambridge. And we're really excited this summer to have this be a hands-on, immersive, in-person experience where we're exploring and learning outside. We're not just sitting indoors all the time. We know that everyone's been doing a lot of that this year. And we're really fortunate to have the entire city of Boston at our disposal as our classroom base and as a place where we can exchange ideas and hear from some of these incredible thinkers and thought leaders that we've already been introduced to. And of course, the highlight that we always hear at the end of the summer when we talk to all the students who are coming home is that it's a great opportunity to make friends and have some fun and just interact with some other people who have a shared passion to yours. And we know that this is just scratching the surface on general program information, and we really want to make time for any questions that you might have. And so I'm going to stop this screen share so that if anyone has any questions, our colleagues, Rebecca and Patrick, will uplift them and we'd be happy to answer them here. And as I said, if we don't get to answer them here, you can call us anytime at 802-387-5000.
Yeah, people can go ahead and drop their questions in the Q&A below and I'll read them live and they can answer. The first one we have is how many students in a cohort or project group? So how large will the seminars be, and then will there be a larger cohort of combined seminars?
I can go ahead and take that one. Right now we have a bit of a range, and so they're going to be a little bit flexible, obviously depending on your interest and what you're excited to join. But we're anticipating about 60 students overall in the entire summit, with all of those broken down into the different action focus groups. And so if of those 60, 50 students are really thrilled to learn about community health, then obviously we'll have multiple action focus groups focused on community health. But you can plan on having a little pod, if you want to call it that, of between 10 to 15 students that you're working with 2 group leaders to come up with your ideas and navigate all of these issues, in addition to the larger group that you'll be interacting with.
Great. I'm going to kind of combine the next 2 questions, which are, will students be able to independently explore Boston and Cambridge? And then the next, which kind of ties in, is what's a typical day look like, and what's the structure between program time and free time?
I'm happy to take a shot at the Boston Cambridge one, and then I'll let Maya and Sky take the second part, or the first part actually. Listen, what I loved about being at the School of Public Health when I went from Kennedy School is the Kennedy School is in the Harvard Yard, Cambridge thing, where all of the undergraduate stuff goes on. The cool thing about the School of Public Health is it's in downtown Boston. It shares the campus with the medical school, with the dental school, but it's all graduate programs. Beautiful green, great location, but you're right there. And people haven't asked about housing yet, but this the School of Public Health doesn't have a lot of dormitories because graduate students tend to find apartments and blah, blah, blah. So the great thing is the Mass College of Art is right back of Harvard School of Public Health and a medical school. We're going to be living, we hope to be living and eating there. And the answer is you're in downtown Boston instead of on the Cambridge side. We'll obviously go over to the Harvard Yard side for some things, but you're around great little restaurants, great stores, great museums, great, I mean, Sky can tell you more about it because she's there all the time, except for under COVID hiding that she's in now. But bottom line is there will be plenty of opportunities to go out in small groups. The only thing I want to warn you about is the program's only a week long. So, and it's intense. So you don't have a lot of free time just because between getting your action plan together, seeing these listening to incredible speakers, being involved with each other, there's a lot to do. So don't want to pretend that it's sort of like, hey, you know, what do I do now? This is action packed, lot to do, lot to bring in. You can see from listening to Dr. Bernstein, you know, these are amazing people you have access to. You're going to want to suck up every second of that. So it's not going to be like, hey, we have a lot of free time to go around, because you're just not going to have a lot of free time. You're going to want to go get it. The last thing I'll mention hasn't been mentioned yet along the question of sort of what can I do there. And that this is important. A lot of students are choosing to do 2 weeks, climate and public health, because they're obviously interrelated, and it's a huge opportunity to really dig into both issues. So that's the first part, is that yes, you're in downtown Boston. No, you won't have a lot of time. Yes, we'll do everything we can. Fun there.
Do a little bit. Maya, when you're addressing, or Maya and Sky, when you're talking about a day on campus, there is some questions about how much time is spent listening to people, experts lecture, and actually working on hands-on projects, as well as how much free time versus working on your seminar.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I like to describe it as a really dynamic mix. It's hard to describe a typical day because it's so short, and every day is different, because we recognize that there's different learning styles and there's so many different people to engage with, that we really want to harness that energy and just maximize all the different ways that we can interact as a group. And so, you know, on one given day, we might start with a guest speaker who's talking to the group, and then everyone would break down into pods and reflect on that and see how that intersects with their own life, their own interests, their own worlds, work on their climate action plan. And then in the afternoon, they might be kayaking alongside some youth activists who are talking about activism related to climate change and the river in the area. And then in the evening, we might be getting together for some games or a film screening, or some students might want to further ask questions to experts who are there with us over mealtime, or they might want to work on their project, or there might be a small window of free time. But like Governor Shumlin said, it's really action-packed, and we recognize that it's short, and we want to take advantage of that time that we have together and really engage in a lot of different ways. So you can expect panels, you can expect active like outdoor excursions around Boston. You can expect hands-on workshops, guest speakers, really the whole range of everything throughout the time that the group is together.
And just an important, like, mundane point, there's a group meeting of everybody every night where we figure all the stuff out for the next day, and students have a lot of input into that.
What is the living situation there?
So students will be housed in the Mass College of Art, which is, for those who have been there, it's literally across the street from the School of Public Health. It's kind of sandwiched actually right between the C-CHANGE office and the School of Public Health. And the dormitories, we're not sure exactly yet what the rooming situation will look like. Obviously, we want to let that wait and evolve as we get closer to the program, but it could be single rooms or it could be double rooms, depending on how that roommate scenario breaks down, with shared bathrooms in the hall. And then all of our meals will be taken on the campus dining hall of Mass College of Art as well, or in picnics that we have out and about, or at local restaurants. And so the rooming situation, you can expect the dorm room experience to get to try that out. And then for classrooms, we're really going to use all of Boston learning outside, sometimes in classroom spaces, sometimes at, you know, innovation hubs, really trying to move around while we're learning and engaging with this.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about COVID protocol and how that will play into rooming, pods, classes, all of that?
Sure, I'll take a little shot at that. So we actually ran a program last summer when everyone was shutting down in May and June. And this, I'm talking about Putney now. And we had so many students, including those who were planning to go to Harvard, like super disappointed. So we leased out a state college that I was on the board of that was kind of built for COVID, middle of nowhere, Castleton University, between the Green Mountains and the Adirondacks. We had 300 students, 50 staff. We had to invent all this stuff, pods. We had to invent health protocols. We had to invent what the protocols were before you came to the program to make sure that you didn't have COVID and you weren't bringing it into our community. Anyway, we did it. It was hugely successful. Most enthusiastic bunch of students I think we've seen in years because they've been locked up for 3 months. Now it's been a year for a lot of students. So this summer is going to be even more sort of enthusiasm packed. But the bottom line is, we don't have to get into too much detail here. We have since been running GAP programs for college students, very similar to what we're doing at Harvard all over in safe places of the world. We're still doing that, still batting 100, no COVID. And we plan to do that this summer. So we will have very strict protocols about testing before you come, quarantining if you do before you get to us so that we make sure you come to us COVID-free. We then set up a series of pods where within your pod, which tends to be anywhere between 20 and 40 students, you can be family, hang over each other, do all that great stuff, be together again. But when we're out in the community or guest lectures, all that stuff, obviously we're doing the social distancing mask that everybody's doing now. And, most importantly, we test during the program if there's any concern as well. So we figured this one out. We're hoping that we will have gone a long way. I like to say, hey, I think we've come a pretty long way in the last 6 weeks in America. Think what another several months are going to do. And obviously we will respond to the evolving COVID dynamic at the time, but we're super optimistic that it'll be less restrictive than last summer, but we'll be very logical, careful, and ensure that we do everything we can to avoid any infection.
Great. So you had mentioned during talking that you'll be visiting the Harvard Medical School and School of Public Health and the undergraduate area. How is transportation handled? And is it easy for students to go from dorms to their classes on their own?
Do you want me to jump in on that one? So we at Harvard University is a big university. So there's many different schools, and as Governor Shumlin mentioned, the School of Public Health is actually in Boston. So the majority of Harvard is actually located in Cambridge, which is a little distance away from where our campus is, but in and around the School of Public Health and as well as the Mass College of Art, it's very walkable. We're really fortunate that we'll be using spaces, and as I mentioned, we'll probably be using a lot of creative spaces, a lot of outdoor spaces that will be very much close to where the students are staying. That being said, if there was an excursion over to Cambridge, we would make sure to arrange transportation that was safe and met all the protocols that Pete just discussed. And I think we're really excited about getting creative with the campus this summer. It's going to be less of the classroom feel than I think that's probably we had originally envisioned, but there's some amazing spaces that we'll definitely be using. So I would say it's going to be mostly walkable, but when it comes down to transport, we will make sure to have a safe plan in place.
And just getting probably too much into the weeds, but if you drive, we'll have very careful protocols about how you get dropped off with your parents and all that. If you fly, we meet you at the airport, we bring you over to Harvard, it's all included in the tuition, and we do it in a safe way. So you can fly, you can drive, or you can walk.
Maya, can you touch on how students apply and how many students will be accepted? People are wondering about how competitive, how soon should they apply, and what's that process look like?
Yeah, I will say that we have definitely seen a recent spike in a lot of applications. Suddenly, I think a lot of us are thinking ahead to the summer and we've reached that time. So if this has piqued your interest, I definitely recommend applying as soon as you can. You can apply on our website, and you can do that at goprecollege.com. And there's a link in the invitation that I'm sure you found from Zoom on our website. You can just click the apply now button, and it's super simple, streamlined, all online for you to enter your basic information, name, address, grade level, what program you're interested in, as well as the email addresses for 2 references who can speak to your ability to successfully join this program. You don't have to have reference letters, just their contact information. A very, very short personal statement And the goal of that is more, it's just a short paragraph. It's more for us to get to know you so we can tailor this program to be something that you're really interested in and excited about. And the leaders on the ground can think ahead of time of how to bring in your interest to the program. And once all of that is through, we will send a quick Google form to your references just to get that from them. And you'll put down a deposit to secure space on the program. And at that point, our registration team will help you continue your application forward online. Usually you can find out if you're accepted within 48 hours if you have all of your materials in and ready. And honestly, most people who are applying at that stage, they have sort of self-selected into this. The goal is really, of our application process is really to make sure this is something that you want to do and you're excited about and that you're ready to hit the ground running when you come and join us, because we find that all of the students that join, there's just so much enthusiasm that if you've taken the time to go through that application and make sure this is something that you're really looking forward to, the program just launches off in a really powerful way. And so the application, to repeat, online, super easy and accessible process. And all of your forms and documents that you need will continue through that web portal as well.
Yeah, and I work in the admissions department. So there is a little team of us that if you have any trouble at all when you get on that website and go to apply, just give us a call and we are happy to help you.
Great explanation. I just want to make 2 quick points so that people, because Maya hit the high points, 2 things that matter. One is because of the uncertainty of COVID and the worries about where we will be in July, the $700 deposit this year is entirely refundable up till April 15. If you get cold feet, get nervous, blah, 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 you just call us and tell us. We have a lot to do and we don't want to have to deal with nervous. We don't want you being anxious. So we think by mid-April, everyone will have a better view of exactly how it's going to look for Boston this summer. We're super optimistic, but it's refundable till April 15. Second point, Maya kind of alluded to this, I want to make clear, it's a rolling admissions process. That means those who apply, right, we're getting a lot of applications. We won't accept someone who applies after you, but whose teachers take longer to get their references to us, and we'll bump you out and say, sorry. When we get your application and your $7 deposit, and it takes 5 seconds to fill out the form itself, we will then send you an email saying, yes, we have space, or no, we don't. If we say we have space, we'll hold that space until we get all your references. We don't give it to someone who's faster and comes behind you. So bottom line is you would be turned away if we thought you weren't ready for it. If we thought that you had, you were having challenges that frankly we're just not trained to deal with. We're looking for motivated students who are committed to these issues and who can work well in groups to come up with a great plan. So that's the bottom line. Time is not on your side on the application process. If you're excited about this, get moving.
All right, well, that is the conclusion of our questions. So people are just saying thank you to all of you. You did a great job.
Thank all of you. And listen, I mean, Sky and Maya and Dr. Bernstein got me so excited. I can't wait for this summer. And this is really unusual. I just want to close by saying, this is kind of like forces coming together to finally address what I think is so important, which is when I go out and talk to middle and high school students about this one, even as old as I am generationally, what I hear consistently is, listen, you don't have to convince us this is the most important challenge of our life. You all kind of dump this one on us. And if we don't get it right, we know that it's miserable futures, probably for us when we're old, definitely for our kids, and undoubtedly for our grandkids. Like, don't convince us. But for God's sakes, how do we get the tools that we need to turn this opportunity into action? And that's really what this is all about. So I'm so excited that Harvard's dedicating its resources to middle school and high school students on this one. And I think it's going to be a great journey. Thanks.
All right. Well, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining.